Hey everyone, welcome to my art stream. Today we're going to be doing watercolor. I'm Sarah, and I just want to talk a little bit about watercolor. So if you noticed that I had the supplies listed, I have a pencil. So that is a key ingredient, and that's the reason for that is because watercolor needs to be planned. You can layer the colors, whereas with acrylic, let's say I paint blue, and then later on, after it's dry, I decide I want to paint red. Okay, so I go and I paint red. It's just going to completely cover the blue. Whereas with watercolor, it will change to purple. So it's important that we plan everything out because, for example, we don't have white paint in watercolor. We use the paper. So it's important that we plan, so we will use the pencil and do a little bit of drawing. Let's see what else we've got here. I've got my paints. Now, I do have tube paints here. Let me get these out. One more. All right, so I have these tubes of paints. And we've got a red, blue, and yellow, but we actually have two blues. So instead of the white, we've got the brown, but instead of the white like we do with acrylic, we actually have two blues. We have a warm blue and a cool blue. So the cool blue has a little bit more purple in it, and the warm blue has a little bit more green, like a little more yellow. So that's the difference. Now, I still have paint left over. The great thing about watercolor is you can reconstitute it, meaning you can add water and bring it back to life. So I'm going to be kind of reusing some of the colors I've used in the past. If you have, I have this here because if you have this kind of paint set where you've got, this is like Crayola, I think is the brand. If you have something like this, it's totally fine to use this. Keep in mind that some of the colors, especially since I have two blues, some of the colors may be a little different. So if you look, I've got some different colors mixed here. The color blue that's in here is right there. So you can see that's very warm compared to this, which is very cool. So what you do is you just add a little bit of purple to it. So you bring some color here, bring some color from here, mix it together, and voila. You get a cooler blue. So keep that in mind. The same thing, if I'm mixing a green, either go ahead and mix it using the blues that I'm using, or if you're going to mix it with this green, it may need to be cooled down a little bit because this green is a very warm green. So, all right, that's the lesson for those watercolors. I have some water, and I have my brushes. Now, we are going to be using both brushes today. I've got a filbert, which is also called a wash brush, and it's a flat brush that's got this rounded top there. And then I also have a round brush, and this is a size 6 and this is a size 12. I also have a palette knife, but I very rarely use it. I usually just mix my paints with my paintbrush, but every once in a while I do, so I like to keep that on hand. Okay, so today we're going to be doing a field of crocus flowers. Now, normally a landscape is going to be horizontal. Let me move this out of the way. Oh, and don't forget paper towels. That's important since we're using lots of water. So normally a landscape is this way. However, like I talked about on Tuesday, if you were with me on Tuesday, this is landscape orientation, this is portrait orientation. The reason you would switch between the two is depending on how much, well, whatever is going on in your painting or drawing that is interesting determines which way it's going to be. So in this particular case, we have this field of flowers that's kind of going off into the distance. So since that's taking up a great deal of depth, then we're going to be doing a portrait rather than a landscape. So let's go ahead and start. Let's get out our pencil. And if you were here with me during the flower stream, this next part is going to seem a little familiar to you. But we're going to do our two flowers in the front. And what we're going to do is start with an oval. And I'm going to hold this up so you can see it because it's very light. So we're starting with an oval. And then we're going to have another little oval right next to it. And I've got that one kind of tilted. And then from here, we're going to actually have our stem. And I'm doing this very light because if I do it any darker, you can't really erase. Watercolor paper has like this texture to it, and if you try to erase, it'll actually take away some of that texture, and we don't want that because that's what picks up our water. So I'm just trying to do this as light as possible. All right, now we're going to make a bell shape. I'll hold that up for you to see. So it's kind of like an upside down bell, if you can see that. I guess it's more like a V, like a rounded V. All right. All right, we're also going to go ahead and draw our horizon line. So our horizon in this particular painting is curved. Let me go ahead and bring this up so you can see our reference photo. I normally mention this at the beginning of the stream, and I got a little bit ahead of myself. But if you look, hold on, let me see where to hold my pencil. If you look right there, you'll see I have a link to my Discord server, and there may actually be a button somewhere on my page. I don't know if Twitch has changed everything around yet, but, excuse me, if you go to my Discord server, and I'm going to pull that up, you will see the reference photo for today. So let's pull this up. So this is our reference photo. So you can see those two big flowers in the front. That's what I'm drawing here with these bell shapes. Also, see how the horizon line in the background, instead of being straight across, is curved. And that gives us the idea that we're looking at this from lower, like we're right next to those flowers. So that's what we're going to be drawing today. So let's go ahead and get that curved horizon line. So I'm going to start maybe a couple inches from the bottom, from the top, sorry. And I'm just going to do a curved line. And that's it. That might be a little bit too curved, but that's okay. I'm not terribly worried about it. It's going to look good either way. Watercolors are meant to be a little bit haphazard. So the whole idea behind a watercolor is that you let the water do a lot of the work. And so a lot of times we're going to be doing things like painting the sky with water and then going in and putting the actual paint on top of the water and letting it spread where it wants to go. I call this collaborating with the universe because the idea is that you're not doing a lot of the work. You're starting some of the work, but you're letting the water and how the water flows kind of dictate where your paint's going to go. And then when it dries, a lot of times it ends up drying like darker around the edges and things like that. So you get this really nice serendipity with watercolor that you don't get with everything else, just because like I said, you're letting the water do the work. If you've ever heard of something called Taoism, or you're familiar with that, in the Tao is water. Hi, Teacher Margot. Okay, you can't do the art today. Well, I've been holding it up, so I don't know if you just came on or not. I've been holding it up every time I do a little line, but thank you for letting me know. The reason the lines are so light today is because I want to be able to paint over them later without them showing through the paint. But thank you very much for the heads up on that, and hopefully you enjoy the stream and can come back and do it later. I'm still pretty impressed with those lilies, so I know your crocuses will be amazing. So what I was talking about was with the Tao. It's commonly referred to as water. Like the Tao is water, because water will flow in whatever way it needs to flow. So let's say, you know, there's rocks and the water's having to flow around the rocks. So it just goes around the rocks, right? It doesn't try to do anything. You know, it just does what it needs to do to continue moving forward. So that's the Tao. With that in mind, that's why I like watercolor. I think it's a little bit meditative, but also because it's this idea that by letting the water do a lot of the work, it's letting you be Tao, right? So it's letting the water do its thing, and also you just participating in that, you observing what the water does and being amazed and awed by that, because it is a really beautiful thing. So that is what I am, that's what I focus on when I'm doing watercolor. All right, enough chit chat. Let's see. We are going to finish doing some flower stuff down on the bottom. So we've got our horizon in. Let's just do, we're going to do some petals here. So starting out, I'm going to draw a couple petals. We're using this as a guideline. So I'm going to draw a couple petals, and then I'm going to show you what that looks like, because it is very dark. All right, so I'm going to hold this up. So see how I'm just doing this kind of, I don't know what shape you would call that. It's like, I don't know. It looks like a poorly drawn eye. I don't know what that shape would be called, but you've got a point on both sides and it's rounded. Okay. We'll have another one come up behind here. And again, we're using our circle that we did earlier as our template. And like I said, if you remember, I'm going to show you guys this. If you remember from our flower stream, this is exactly how we did our flowers then too. So this is definitely a technique that you can use anytime you want to do flowers. Okay. All right, so hold that up so you can see. And these don't have to be exact. Excuse me. Again, the beautiful thing about watercolor is that it's not exact. And it doesn't have to look that way. No, like when a viewer looks at a watercolor, what makes it amazing is that it's impressionistic. You know, that you look at it from a distance and you get the impression of something rather than it having to be exact. All right, let me get this last one in here and I'll hold it up. So this flower here is actually going behind. So I am going to just try to very lightly erase. I'm not going to probably, if I did it light enough, I might be able to. It looks like I drew it light enough. I'm barely touching it with my eraser. Barely, barely, barely. So it's not going to get up the whole line, but it's close enough. I might as well go ahead and see if I made it light enough everywhere else. All right. In this particular case, you can wipe because this is number 2 pencil. Number 2 pencil does not smear as much as the other pencils. So I'm going to hold this up so you can see. So these are our croci. I think that's how you say that. Crocuses, croci. I don't know. I think we get to make it up today. What do you think? I think so. Okay. Another sip of water. All right, we're done with drawing. So let's go. First things first, we're going to start doing our clouds in our sky. So, Now remember, I talked about the fact that we're going to be looking at 1 point perspective. So our perspective is going to go off into the distance. It does curve a little bit, but I'm going to show you how that works. So just keep that in mind as we're going. Okay. I'm going to start with my filbert. I'm going to get it wet. Okay, and remember when you're first getting your brush wet, you just push it, and you can see those bubbles coming up. You just push it against the bottom of the cup, and that gets all the little air bubbles out. Okay. Let's see, what colors do I want? I don't have any yellow in here, so I'm going to go ahead and get some yellow. Actually, I'm going to clean out this middle part so we can get some new colors here. It really does just take a little bit of water. I'm going to clean this one out too. I don't even know what half of these colors are. So all I did was put some water on there. And then I'm going to go in and just wipe it out. That's it. Look at that. Clean as new. Now acrylic unfortunately isn't as friendly as watercolor. Another reason why I like painting with watercolor. Alright. So we're going to start with yellow. What we're going to be making is a little bit of gray. Eee! Oh, my yellow. Oh, my yellow. Hold on. There we go. It was just a little stuck. If you ever get it completely stuck, you can run this part right here under a little bit of warm water, just for like, I don't know, 20 seconds, not that long. And it not only heats up the plastic, which makes the plastic more flexible, but it also will water down. Like I did these colors, it just adds water to it and kind of loosens it up. So, all right, so I'm going to put some yellow in here. And you don't need much, but at the same time, you can save it later. So, you know, not like we're wasting by putting too much if we did. Okay, let's see. So we're also going to do some ultramarine blue. Now again, if you're using this, ultramarine is the cool blue. So you would take your regular blue and mix a little bit of purple with it. So I'm going to give myself just a little bit more of the ultramarine. And then we've got phthalo crimson, which is our red. And I'm almost out of phthalo crimson. It looks like there's a lot there, but there's really not. So I'm gonna just put some more there. It's more, it was just spread out. Okay. So what we're gonna do is we are going to wet our paints. Now how you do this is you take water and just drip it right on the edge. And what that's gonna do is see how it's dripping down in there into the pan, but I'm not actually touching the paint. Okay, so that's one. We'll go ahead and do the blue. Hold this a little closer to the water so I don't. So I usually do this like 3 or 4 times. I'll do it 4 for the blue since we had some that needed to be reconstituted at the bottom. Same for the red. 1, 2, 3, quattro. All right. So how you get your color going, and you can see it's already starting to do it. See how that water before turned yellow? So I'm going to pick up my yellow first, and what you do is you agitate the water, but you don't touch the paint. You don't have to touch the paint. Just agitate the water right at the edge, and it's going to pull some of that paint into it. Now, we don't need it to be too terribly dark because we're making a light gray. So I'm going to pull some yellow into the center just by dipping my brush and bringing it into the center. Trying to wipe a lot of that off. Okay. Now I'm going to clean my brush. All right, and do the same thing. I'm going to agitate the water until it looks pretty soupy. Trying not to touch the paint directly. Okay. Now we've made like this weird greenish color. Okay. And I just wipe the brush on the side, and that gets most of it off. Okay, and one more is the red. Now the red we're not going to use very much of. We still need to agitate it, but I'm going to wipe most of it off. That is still too much red. So I'm going to add, let's see, what do I want to add to this? Blue, a little bit of blue. Not much. There we go. That's a nice gray. Look at that. How much proof do you need that red, blue, and yellow equals black? Because we just got gray from it. Okay. It doesn't. It actually equals gray. You get what's called a neutral gray. Now, the cool thing is with watercolor is the more color you add, that the more opaque it's going to get. That means the opposite of that. The more water you add, the more transparent it's going to get, right? But that also makes the color lighter because this works in layers. All right, let's do this. So what we're going to do is first we're going to paint some clouds. So I'm just painting water up in the sky, kind of in places where I know I'm going to want clouds to be. So I'm doing the top right corner. You can't see it. I'm going to try. Let's see if I can hold it so you can see the shininess. Nope, you sure can't. On your paper, you'd be able to see a shininess where this is. So I'm going to do here. I'm just not being too picky about where it goes, but I look at it every once in a while from an angle just to see, and that's pretty good. All right, so now that I've got my water on there, I'm going to pick up some of my gray, and this is the serendipity part. So you just touch it in different places, just kind of dot it around, and then you can move it around. Look at that. You can move it around. Do cool stuff with it. Okay. So I'm gonna... We haven't done a watercolor class in a while. I think I've done several acrylic classes. So I'm just dotting the canvas, the paper, with my brush, and then just kind of pushing it around. Now I might get some more water and maybe come in here, and then it'll really go to the edge there. I can add a little bit more. I don't think I'm using this gray for anything else, so we can use it up if we have to. Now how this is going to dry, nobody knows. That's the beauty of watercolor. You just don't know. Now, I'm noticing that my paper is starting to bridge up a little bit, trying to bulk. That's okay. That's going to happen because, of course, we're getting the paper wet. But I'll tell you a technique at the end for flattening that once everything's dry. Okay. So we've got this kind of yellowish gray going on there. It's really pretty. All right. I might do, get a little bit more of this. I'm going to just do some dotting right here. There we go. Just let my brush, this is a dry brush a little bit, but I'm just letting it kind of come down. We're going to actually have some trees here. That's why I left that blank. All right, so I'm going to dry my brush off because I don't think we're using the big brush anymore. I think we're going to move to the smaller brush. All right, so let's get our brush wet. Remember, just move it across the bottom. Okay, so now we're going to mix, let's see, we'll go ahead and mix our trees. We'll do this in the middle here. If you've used up most of your gray, that's good. Let's do, okay, so we're going to use, let's see, mostly yellow. Again, you shouldn't need to touch the paint directly. You should just be able to get some from the water. So mostly yellow. And then a little tiny touch of the ultramarine blue. Remember, this is your cool blue. So I'm just going to put that in once. All right, so now I'm going to come in. I'm going to start, because this is still a little wet up here, I'm going to start across the bottom. And I'm just going in little circles. And I'm trying not to go all the way up to the clouds. Now this is called dry brushing because I did not wet the canvas first. Now I'm allowing it to go past my line. So as you can see, my line went up a little bit, but remember I said earlier that I thought maybe I went up a little too far? Well, I'm making up for that now. And I'll do the same on the other side with the blue sky when I come in. So all I'm doing is just reimagining my line and where it is. Now we're going to add a little bit more blue and get a darker green, and then just come in at the bottom here. And it should go up to the top. Now I might have some at the top here. Should mix a little bit with the paint that we just put down. Chat is quiet today. All right, I'm going to mix just a little bit more blue, get it even darker. Well, that was way darker. So maybe not completely blue. Let's get a little bit of yellow in there. And come in the very bottom, the very base. I'm kind of skipping little areas because when it dries, it'll dry a little darker around the edges, so it'll make it look like maybe bushes or something like that. By adding all these different colors of green, we're layering. All right, so we're gonna let that dry. Now I'm looking at my sky and it's still pretty shiny, which means it's not dry yet. Yep, the water's still moving. So I'm gonna go ahead and mix some of my color for down here. We're gonna mix like a yellowish color. All right, so I'm gonna actually dab this green up and because we don't need that mixing with our yellow. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and get some water in the middle here so you can see I'm just putting water in the middle because we're going to need quite a bit of color for the middle part, for the field. All right, and then I'm going to take, and this time I'll let my brush kind of touch the paint. So when I come over here, then that makes it nice and soupy. We can actually get some more water in here if we need to. Want a nice big soup. All right. So we're going to pick up just, I mean, tiny bit. We're going to pick up just a tiny bit of the ultramarine blue, again, your cool blue, and mix in here. Okay. Now, we are going to wet, using just water, we're going to wet the entire field, except for the flowers that we made in the front. So kind of come down in between it and be careful. But we're wetting everything except for these flowers. If you need to use your smaller brush for this area, you can. I'm leaning back and looking to see where the shiny part is so I know where my flowers are. I'm just getting everything wet. It's okay if it dries a little. It's not that big of a deal. The main key right now is just to get water as many places as possible. Notice I've got some paper down. I haven't always done that with watercolor in the past, but I knew I was going to be painting to the edges today, so I put a little bit of paper down just so I don't get my desk painted. Even though watercolor does clean easier than acrylic, you know, I didn't want to risk it. You know, why risk it? All right, so over here, I'm not going to go all the way up. Because I'm reimagining where that line is, remember. Reimagining. Oh, now some of that green was still wet. You can see it starting to come down there. And that's okay. It's not that big of a deal, but we're just going to need to be careful right in that area. All right. Oh, it's like completely dry up here. Missed like a big section. Okay, and I'm trying to keep a little bit of a distance from the paint that I just put down. So now I'm going to go ahead and get some color on here. And I don't need to be super careful about it. I mean, a little bit, but not super, because it's going to go where the water is, right? That's where it wants to go first. Go where the water is. So as you can see, there's still a little white line. We're going to keep that. Because that will give the illusion, kind of like what we did on Tuesday, it gives the illusion that there's, you know, that edge of that field there is far away, because what our eyes do is our eyes tend to make things look paler and closer together as it goes farther away. So since our field is very far away, that's what it's going to look like. Now I'm going to try to use up all of this because I don't need this color for anything else. So I'm just like letting it be kind of choppy. The paint's going to go where it wants to go, so I'm not trying too hard to do anything. All right. So now we have a lot of wetness on the paper. So there's a couple things you can do. So you could get a hairdryer, right? But I don't recommend that with watercolor. And the reason why is because if you use a hairdryer, it doesn't really let the water do its thing, because the water will still continue to move around and stuff like as you jostle the paper. Whereas if you use a hairdryer, boom, that's done. So I don't think... Like I said, it depends on how wet it is, but I don't recommend using a hairdryer. But if it's very, very wet, like mine is very wet right now, then you might want to use one just to keep a move on. I'm going to do the sky though. So this is what I usually do to get things to dry. So my sky is mostly dry. And so what I'm going to do is go ahead and mix my blue. I might blow on my sky a little bit. Let me see. Because there's always that. I mean, it is similar to a hairdryer, but it's not as much because you're still moving it around. And of course, the air from your mouth is cooler. That's pretty close. All right. So what I do is I skip around, you know, like maybe I do this section here, then I skip that, and do this section here, then I skip that, you know, and go back and forth. So I'm going to actually use my round brush. I'm going to scoop up the remainder of the paint that's there and get some water. So I'm doing what we did before with the field. I'm just getting some water here by just wiping it against the side there. All right. So we're going to pick up a little bit of our ultramarine blue, our cool blue, and get that going. But our sky is not quite that bright. So I'm going to tone it down with a tiny bit of yellow. Not much, but a tiny bit. That warms it up just a little bit. Then I'm going to get just a tad bit of red. And what that's going to do is purple it a little bit. I'm going to add just a little bit more water. I might add just a tiny bit more blue. There we go. Yeah, I like this color. All right. So I'm going to, oh, I just set my hand down. You can see where my hand was. Set my hand down somewhere else. I'm going to try dry brushing this first and see what happens. So I'm just coming in here, filling in these little areas. I do have a couple that are still wet, so I'm trying to be careful not to get too crazy around those. Okay, remember we're coming down a little farther to the edge of our field there. So I'm coming right up to the edge of the clouds. All right, now that I've got some on there, I'll just go in, just kind of dot color. I'm going to make it darker on the side over here. And let's see, what else? Oh, I just painted right into my cloud. That's okay. Serendipity. Happy accidents. Just like let it happen, you know? It's how you get really interesting stuff. So, watercolor was one of the first things that taught me how to relax when I'm painting. Because I like things to be perfect, you know, and I'd work on stuff for a really long time. You know, it needed to feel complete to me. I needed it to feel like it was finished. And of course, for an artist, our works never really feel like they're finished, you know? So, needless to say, watercolor taught me to just like let go. Okay, I'm getting some clean water. I notice that my gray down here doesn't go all the way down to the trees. So I'm just going to bring a little bit of it. Let's see. Maybe I want to do my trees. I'm just going to mix a little yellow with that blue. Give it that kind of grayish. And I'm just going to come in there. Now, because I don't want to leave this random color at the bottom or it'll look like a line, I'm going to get some clear water and just paint up into my cloud a little bit. There we go. But that will make it so you don't see like a jagged line going around. Okay, so now we're going to, sorry, I'm having issues with my computer. All right. Let's see. We've skipped around a little bit. We need to let the sky dry. I feel like we probably are going to need to, what are we going to do? Let's work on the crocus. Okay, so that's this part right here. The part around it is pretty dry. So what we're going to do, I'm going to, it's not going to matter. That little bit of color isn't going to matter. So we're going to do our ultramarine blue and our phthalo crimson. So I'm just bringing in some ultramarine blue. Wiping off my brush and then getting some phthalo crimson. So I'm putting it down first before I start mixing. Look at that color. So pretty. Okay, that's a very crimson-y color. I'm going to pick up some water and add some water here. I'm going to water down that crimson a little bit. And maybe even make it a little more blue. So I'm going to pick up a little bit of blue. There we go. All right, now this color is going to balance. I'm going to show you guys something, actually. Give me one moment, please. I'll be right back. Ta-da, my color wheel. Okay. So the color I just mixed is this color. It's a red violet because there's a little bit more red in it. The color that we've got down on the paper is a yellow green. Look at where those colors are on the color wheel. They're directly across from each other. These are called complementary colors. What that means is that they're opposite, and it also means from a compositional point of view that they are going to, it's the biggest contrast you can get is opposite colors, right? Black and white. In this case, yellow, green, and red, violet are the opposite colors. So you are getting the most contrast you can possibly get when you have these two colors. So this is actually a really good color combination, is by having those two. So I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead I'm going to wet these first. We're going to use the wet on wet. So I'm going to just do the first petals. And you want to make sure that it's completely dry. The yellow part is completely dry, and it's mostly dry. It's dry enough where it's not going to blend together. Oops, almost grabbed my color. Okay, I'm going to do this other petal. All right, so let's go ahead and pick up some of that color. We can just touch it to it. We don't really have to do much. Like, look, it's starting to spread. So pretty. All right, so I'm going to push a little bit of color up into the top there. I'm just going to let it kind of move around. Let me get a little bit more. Now, if you let something dry in place and then you come back, you'll have interesting spots right where it dries, unless you really move it around with the water. That's hard to do. It's hard to erase in watercolor. That's what I call erasing. All right, so we've got those two. Now, we're not going to continue because it's going to run right into these. So we're not going to do that just yet. So now what we're going to do is make some dark green, and since I already have a little bit of dark green going on here, it looks like. Hold on, let me see what color this is. Yeah, this is some kind of green. Let me see how blue it is. It's a very teal looking green, like maybe a navy blue almost. That could actually work. I don't know. I don't need it to be that dark. I'm going to get a little yellow. Clean your brush every time, because you absolutely do not want to get green in your yellow, because good luck. You just ruined your yellow. So I'm just gradually adding a little bit of color until I get like the green that I want. Maybe just one more. One more. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in around like the top. Oh, that might still be too dark. Or maybe I just need more water. That's probably it. I just need more water. All right. So I'm going to get a clean brush and come in here and move this around. And see how that lightened that up? So I'm just coming around the edges of the flowers here. It's going to come down in the middle. What this is doing is creating an edge rather than, since our pencil lines would have been seen, a little bit anyway. We're creating the edge and making it look like, oh, it was so intentional, you know. Oh, so intentional. I'm going to come around the side here. And I'm letting it just kind of drift off into a lighter color. So I'll pick up some more of that and come across. Now, I'm going to do some like grass. So I'm letting my brush just kind of jut up here or there. And that gives the illusion of like grasses. So all I'm doing is just letting my brush go up and down. Okay. So I just let it kind of, you know, meander off. Let's see, I'm going to do some stuff here in the front. This I'm not trying to fill in. I'm just being more grassy about it. Just really loose, grassy strokes. And it can come off the bottom of the page because that it does that in the painting itself. All right. So as I get close to this pink, I'm going to be really careful. I called it pink. It's like a purple. It's like a mauve. It's marvelous, darling. It's marvelous. Okay, I'm leaving a little bit of room for the stem because the stem is going to be, oh, and I caught a little bit of my pink, and that's okay. I'm going to leave a little bit of room for the stem. We'll fix that later. We're going to let it dry and we'll fix it later. Nothing we can do about it right now. So see how I left little stem areas? It's just the negative space. Just like on Tuesday, negative space. I don't even remember what was the negative space on Tuesday. What was it? It was, I don't know. Maybe the negative space was the fairy house. I don't remember now. We deal with negative space a lot in art, so it really could have been any of the lessons. All right, so I've got this green going on down here. For some reason, the corners, the ones especially that are probably closest to the glue part, because I use a watercolor pad for the paper, that's where I get the most problems with that sizing, where like for some reason in this bottom corner, it's not wanting to cover with water. It's just like pooling on top. Well, that's because there's sizing on the paper. The sizing is what helps keep the paper crisp and from sticking to the other paper if there's humidity or things like that. But of course, this is humidity, right? I mean, it's water. So we're trying to humidify our painting, and it's not letting us do that. The paper's not. So you just got to work at it a little bit. Okay. Take another drink of water. It's like really hot today for some reason. I think it's just Florida. You know, Florida's hot. I'm going to get a little bit of pure yellow and just come in here and just do some yellow marks. And this just adds like a little layer of interest. Visual layer of interest. So you can come back in with your dark color if you want. Add another layer. And see how it's adding these layers of interest. Let me get my brush wet. Well, and now remember how I said that watercolor, you know, it adds as you lay it down and as it dries. So now we're coming in and adding more layers, which is just going to darken what's beneath it. So even though it's the same color, it makes it look darker. There we go. Okay. If you're dry brushing, that's not actually good. the watercolor paper. I mean, I guess it can be. You can use that as a technique, but that's not what we want. All right. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go ahead. This should be mostly dry. Should be. All right. We're going to go ahead and do some of the back flowers. So I'm going to do the one right here. And I'm not getting it wet first. I'm going to skip and do the one right here. I'm leaving a little bit of space in the middle because we are going to do some yellow for our pistil. I got it right this time. I mean, I got it right last time. I just kept questioning whether I got it right. So this time I know for sure it is the pistil that comes up from the middle. So I'm going to leave that and I'm going to start working on my little guy over here. Trying to be careful because my grass is still a little wet. And we should be able to do this flower here, this petal. There's a lot of petals that are right next to each other. There we go. All right. A lot of drying needs to be done. So let's do this. We're going to gray up this green a little bit. And how do you gray green? Add a little bit of red. And I'm going to actually add some water too. We don't want to gray it up too much because then it's going to be brown. Let's see. Let's see what it looks like. Oh, that's not too bad. I mean, it is gray, but it's nice. It's a nice gray. So I'm just coming in here and just I'm mixing. This is just adding another layer of information. I'm going to try not to get too close to my petals. Right up next to them, but not quite touching. Okay, so now over here is where we started letting it just kind of drift off into the sunset. You know what? We gotta fix this down here. So since I did that, now I gotta do a little bit more because we do not want it looking lopsided. So I'm adding some gray down here in the front, even though that's not really in the picture, but that's okay. I mean, you know, it's watercolor. What are you going to do? We'll just make it happen, right? Just make it happen. So if you're doing this at home and you did not mess up your little flower there, you don't necessarily have to do this. I just realized that I had mixed my new green before I fixed that, so. And it's still not totally fixed, but it's okay. It's not that noticeable. I'm mixing in some more blue. I'm gonna do this. I don't know. I don't know how it's gonna dry. We're gonna try it. Just so you know, I don't think this particular painting is gonna take terribly long, much longer anyway. So I'm not gonna be doing the stretches today. If you want to just stop for a moment and do some little stretches in your chair, we've got to let this dry. So let's do that. And look what I did over here. Look what I did. I got just a little too close. It's all right. You could do a stretch. Oh, I'm making myself yawn with that stretch. So you could do like a sun salutation where you bring your hands up above your head and look up. Or you can do just, you know, like a nice big old cat stretch, yawn, you know, whatever. I like to twist, roll my shoulders a little bit. All right, let's see how we're doing. Well, my flower is still very wet. My grass is still very wet. So what we're going to do, I'm going to add a little bit of yellow to this because I do want this to be less red, maybe. Just a tad bit of blue. Okay. So I'm going to come in and do some little light grasses in here. I put the yellow on. I'm testing something. I'm going to do the yellow right over the gray, or rather the gray right over the yellow. Yeah, that's not too bad. That's not too bad at all. So we'll just do that. As I get close to my flower, I'm being very careful. But I'm just letting my brush, you know, stroke down into the grasses in the front if you want. You know, this is just another layer. I'm going to do the same thing over here. These kind of spiky. I'm going to pick up some yellow, and then get that gray in there. Oh, this is darker than that side. More water. If something is too dark, just add more water. Trying to move my brush like really like big wide strokes. Now as I get close to my flower, I'm going to try to be a little more careful. Maybe a little more yellow in there. just coming in and doing some yellow just to kind of blend everything, you know. Here we go. Sometimes it just takes playing with it for a little bit just to see what you can get. All right, so I'm going to come in here and do some yellow up here. And then I'm going to take that kind of grayish green and come here. But because I did a lot more yellow, should be lighter. Yep. We're just mixing all of our colors together. Get a little more water on my brush. Now this, I'm still seeing that line there. So I'm just going to play with the edge there a little bit, just like I did down here. Just play with the edge until it looks the way I want it to look. Sometimes it won't, sometimes you won't get there. So we'll just see. Sometimes you just gotta, let it be, just let your brush do things. Don't think too much about what it is you're trying. Don't make your brush do something. Just let it happen. And see, that's looking a lot better. All right. So now I'm going to start doing my little distance thing. Okay. So this is our 1 point perspective. We're going to start doing little tiny strokes. Little tiny ones. And it's going to start kind of wide. This is going to be like our road. It's going to start wide. And then it's going to gradually get smaller and more distant. Now this is going off to the side. So our 1 point perspective is here. So it actually curves. And what we're going to do is I'm just going to dot the surface. So I'm just dabbing at it with my paintbrush. And I'm going to let it kind of get big over here on the right because it's like there's a big field in the background that we can see. Adding little bits of yellow here and there. Okay. It almost looks like a reflection, doesn't it, of the trees in the background? Pretty cool. We could do that. We could make this a little lake if we wanted to, where this is going around the side of the lake. We're not going to. I'm just saying you could go with that. You could say, hey, that looks like a reflection. I'm going to make it look more like a reflection, in water. You can do whatever. That's what's awesome about this. Okay. Now I'm going to pick up a little bit of yellow and we're going to start doing little marks here and there. right, and I just let them kind of drift off into the distance. All right, now I'm going to come work on these flowers again. I need to be careful because I don't know how wet this area is around it. So I'm trying to be careful. Forgot I had added a little bit of blue to this. And I didn't leave a place for my yellow, so we need to get that out now. So I've got a dry brush, and I'm just going to draw it up the center there. So dry brush, draw it up that same center. Okay, I'm going to come over on this side. Now this side is dry. So this is what we got to do. We're going to wet it. You have to keep at it a little bit. Let's see. Let me see if I can get this side. What you do is you just paint at it with water. I think I'm doing it. Hold on. See how you're starting to see that little shape there? It doesn't have to be perfect. We just have to have enough white, basically, where it's light enough where if I put the yellow down, you'll be able to tell that it's yellow and it won't just blend. All right, so we need to let this dry, and then we can come and put the yellow there. That's the pistil. The pistil of the flower. Okay, now over here, I'm going to actually just paint it yellow. That way, I don't make the mistake. So, the pistil is like right here. Done. All right, let's go ahead and get some more color. We're going to do this outside petal here because it doesn't touch the pistil. I'm not sure how I'm liking these crocus on the outside. I think I'm liking the field more. We'll see. We shall see. Okay. So I'm going to mix a little bit of water here with just a tiny bit of this purplish, maybe just a tiny bit of the yellow. And I'm going to come in and paint down here. It really needs to be more purple. Because, so what purple and yellow make? Purple? Nope, purple, sorry. They call it violet. And yellow are opposite. So they're complementary colors too. That means that they will make kind of a brown when they're mixed together. If you lean a little bit more on the purple side, you will get gray. If you lean a little bit more on the yellow side, you will get brown. So gray and brown are actually in the same family. How about that? How about that? So I just wanted a little bit of brown, like a brownish color. So, and in fact, purple and yellow make one of my favorite colors of brown. It's like a very rich golden brown. So, oh, excuse me. I'm not close to my Kleenex anymore. Okay. Now let's see what we've got. So my yellow up here is still drying. This is drying. This is drying. I've got a lot of drying things. I think my yellow in here is actually okay. So we're going to try. very carefully. If you have to pick up pure yellow from the paint, you can. What I mean from the paint is like actually touching the paint. You know how I've said before, don't touch the paint. Well, you can actually touch it this time, because that's going to make it very concentrated. Since we messed up. Since I messed up. You might not have messed up. It's entirely possible that you did not mess up at all. Ta-da! Look at that. Look at that. All right. I need my little yellow guys out here to dry. I'm going to add more water to the center bit. What we'll do, we'll go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and out here add like the little, like purple. And I'm just dotting like I did before. And what that's going to do is it's actually going to make it look kind of gray because we already had green down there. But it will look more, we can let it be spotty in areas. It will look like a little field of crocus. Okay. We're going to also come in here and just dot in random places. There's another fun thing you can do. So you can, and that is not working. So don't do that thing because it wasn't working. But sometimes you can spread your brush and make it, like when you spread it like a fan, it makes little dots all over the place. Little crocus flowers. I'm trying not to touch my yellow area because my yellow area is still drying. All right, I think my yellow here is dry. So I can come in and do this petal down here. I can do this petal back here. And we're going to hold off on this very last petal over there. All right. We're getting there, guys. We are almost done. I mean, truly, we're almost done. So I'm going to take, I have this brown. I'm going to go ahead and mix some yellow up in that. Get some water in there. I'm trying not to drip on my paper. That's why I'm being real careful. So what I do is I'm tapping it a little bit. All right, I'm going to pick up just a tiny bit of blue. Maybe a little bit more water, even. And I'm going to go right over these little purple flowers that we made. And what this is going to do is it's going to fade them out a little bit because we're getting them wet again. And it's also adding another layer of information. And I'm going to come down and let my brush go over the tops of these grasses down here because that waters those down a little bit. I'll let it go up into the wildflowers up there. That waters those down a little bit. All of this is blending. We're even going to come in here. Get on this side. So I don't think anybody's following along with me today, but if you are, give me a shout out in chat and just let me know so I know whether to go over and look at Discord or not, because otherwise then we'll just kind of skip that part. I mean, I might still go and look because, I don't know, it's in my nature. I can't just leave things alone. I don't know how to do that. It doesn't happen for me very often to just leave something alone. Have to investigate. Well, and it's funny because I'm not even like a nosy person or anything like that, but I'm really curious. I'm just mostly curious about things. I'm not curious about people. So it means that I'm not really very nosy. But when it comes to things, I want to investigate. That's why I like the scientific method so much, because that's all that is just and a big investigation, right? All right, so I'm covering these up quite a bit. I'm like, you're hardly seeing this at all. Then I'm going to take this and do some dots here. Now, of course, it's wet, so these dots are not going to come out really looking like dots. It just makes it look like interesting pattern information. There. This part up here is bothering me a little bit, but we'll figure that out. Okay. We can go ahead and do this little part here. We're not even done with these flowers yet. In fact, over here is like some weird barren information here, so we're just gonna all right. Now we're gonna take our purple and we're gonna do right next to wherever the little yellow was that we did earlier. We're going to come in and put some purple information. So, purple, purple, and as we get farther back, all of a sudden, we're going to start having a lot more purple. I mostly want to make sure I get right next to those yellow, and then we can come in. Just do lots of little dots of purple. What's going to end up happening is that some of our dots are going to be dark and some of them are going to be light, but as long as it follows this narrow path and gets farther away, now I'm just letting my brush continue to go. It's what it wants to do right now. That's what it feels like doing. I can feel it. And I'm going to come down to the edge of this and kind of dot the edge. Give it some more texture information. That's what this is. This is creating texture. So I'm liking this. Now, I do want to get some more dark color here. So just come in, kind of here or there, touch it. All right. Still not entirely happy with this field situation. So what we're going to do is mix a little bit darker green. So I'm getting some yellow here with water. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of this green here and see what that does. Ooh, that's nice. That's nice. Okay, so I'm going to come in here and just do some more information. Just by adding this other layer, again, I'm letting it go down into my other areas. Try not to get too close to the purple because we just did the purple. But I'm kind of being haphazard about it. I'm not trying to do any particular thing. Any particular thing. I'm just going. What this is going to do is gradually I'm blending these two areas together so it doesn't look like this just big patch of nothing in the middle there. Now I'm covering up all those little texture places that I did earlier, but it's okay because that information is still there. It's just much lighter now. So I'm just dotting this all over. We'll add some information up here. I'm not going to add this all the way down. I might like blend some different colors here. Like maybe I'll pick up a little bit more of the darker color right there. And that makes this side of the field not look so vastly different from this side over here. I might come up and, you know, do some of this dark layers, bring it in. It's wet, so it will blend a little bit. I'm liking the way this is looking. All right, we're about to wrap up, y'all. So I'm just doing lots of little tiny strokes here in the back. And that just makes it look very grassy. Maybe some lighter information. You should be pretty dry by now, so I can come in and maybe right around where these flowers are, I do some grasses. All right, let's get the purple correct on here. So I'm going to bring in some more blue. We're going to really purple this up. All right, so first of all, I'm going to go around the outside of this leaf here, petal rather. I called it a leaf. Do both sides of this. And it's fine that we have all this different reddish information, because what happens is that it gives the inside a little bit different information, and it makes it look like these are more shadowy areas. So now, if you look at the reference photo, it has like a little bit of color coming down into the petal. So I'm just going to draw that color down just a little bit. Got a clean brush. Just going to draw that color down. Oops. Went a little crazy with drawing that color down. Okay, let's clean this up. All right. So get a little purple back here, a little purple back here. Not doing much. It's a little bit of information. Now I don't want this, I want to blend this just a little bit so it's not too stark. Let's see. I'm going to get some purple back here around. I'm not terribly thrilled with my croci in the front here. Put a little bit of this purple in here. I won't call this painting a total lack of success, but it's not my best. We can safely say it's not my best. Okay, I'm going to paint a little bit of purple back here in this field. And then I'm going to take this green and just kind of mix into it a little bit. Oops, I lost some of my purple information. Let's see. This section right here is bugging me. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to actually come in with just straight water. I'm going to take a little bit of information out. All right. What that does is it lightens it up so that I can come in and layer some information back in here. Because it's just looking like a little bit too stark to me. Like, I don't know. I wasn't happy with those edges there. It's a little better. Not great, but it's a little better. Maybe if I take some of my purple. I don't know. Probably not going to mess with it too much more. I'm going to call this one. All right. So the bottom part of this is not dry yet. When it is, it's probably not going to make too much of a difference, but I am going to go ahead and just come in and paint the edge of this. Just make that the one petal in the front I want to stand out a little bit. Okay, so we're going to call it done. Always sign watercolor work with pencil. What is this right here? Hold on, we got to fix that. I don't know what's going on. There's like just a big spot. It must be like where my hand touched or something like that. Better. Woo! All right. So down here in the bottom right, sign with pencil. It's traditional with watercolor to always sign in pencil. And now I'm going to do a little critique. Nobody responded in chat, so I might pop over to Discord, but I'm not going to spend a lot of time there. Okay, so looking at this, I'm going to talk about what's the most effective and what's the least effective. So my clouds didn't really turn out how I wanted them to. And there's things I can do to fix this. Like I could come in up at the top and just mix some just pure water up there, and what that will do is it will kind of reconstitute it. Yeah, I could even like come and take some of that information out if I wanted to. That will make it look a little bit different. And maybe, you know, just swirl it right around the edges so it doesn't look like a harsh edge. Because these clouds just aren't, they're not exactly what I was looking for. So maybe get some white information going at the top here. Just come in here and kind of dab it around. There we go. All right, so I don't know. Still not a fan of the clouds, but all right. And also not a fan of the crocus. So today's painting I'm not really super happy with. It's okay. I mean, it looks like a field of something, that's for sure. I actually really like this right here. I don't know. That to me turned out fine. So I guess what I would need to do, if I were going to continue working on it, I would continue working on the grass information, because that's part of what I like about this, is that it has that kind of grassy look to it. So I'd keep doing that. I showed you what I could possibly do with the clouds, like if I wanted to keep working and getting some white in there. Hey, how are you? Elmaine, I haven't seen you in a while. Welcome. So yeah, all right. This area is very effective. The rest of it, there's good layer information there, but it's having these really stark edges, like right here. It's just a little too stark. I want to come in and kind of muddy that up just a little bit, and I think that that's going to, I don't know, it's going to help make everything seamless. That's not all that hard to do. I would just mix a color that's maybe approximately like the darkness of this, come in and do a wash over everything, and that actually should, oh, well, I'm glad you were able to catch a little bit of tonight's. I don't know how long you've been on, but thank you. But yeah, I think that would work. I think if I did a wash, that would be great. All right, so I don't think anybody followed, but just in case, I will go over to Discord. We're going to pop over and just see. Oops. Okay, nope, nobody did. So if you're just joining, this is what we were painting. So, you know, I'm not terribly off, but you can see it's a lot more blended in this area here. Let me, so here in this area is where it's mostly blended. So that's just, you know what I'm missing? There's these giant grasses in the front, like completely missing these. Okay, it's this color green. I'm going to add a little bit more blue to it. Let me see. Let me see what this, no, that's too blue. I'm going to add more yellow to it. Okay. We're going to get there. A little more blue. Okay, so I've got these big grasses in the front that I totally forgot about. We don't want to forget about those. So I'm going to just do a couple of these. I'm just letting my brush flow. I'm going to come across the front of the flower and go up there. And luckily, it's right across the middle there where we kind of messed up earlier. So that works out. And then we're going to imagine where this is coming from the top. It's going to come right about here. Maybe another little one here. This one actually got a little bit on my flower, so I'm just going to clean that up. Like that. And then maybe one right here. Wow, I'm glad I saw that, because that really can make a difference. I don't know if it did in this case, but it can. Sometimes little details like that can really make or break a painting. So I don't think in this case it really mattered that much. But it's something. It's more information, you know. I think there's some more of this green like in here. So that these grasses don't look like just completely out of place. There. All right, so that is it for today. Ta-da! A field of crocus. So the main thing that we were looking at is we were looking at how, like the drawing class, it's wider at the front here. When we have single point perspective, this is our point. It's wider at the front and it gradually gets smaller as it goes to the back, and that allows the eye to see it as going backwards in space. That's how we view that when it gradually gets smaller like that towards a single point. So thank you for joining my stream today. On Tuesday, I'm going to be doing a drawing class. It's going to be about cylinders. So we're going to do coffee cup and I think a bowl of some kind. But it won't take very long. So as an extra bonus, I am going to talk to you about the Rubik's Cube and maybe even show you how to solve one. So stay tuned for that, and have a great weekend. Thanks everyone for joining.